Hey, how's it going? We're back for week 4.
I don't even know what day it is, or
yeah.
what iteration it is probably the better way to say that. We are not in our normal setup, which probably, since there's only a few of you watching, probably figured that out.
For the frequent viewers, if you haven't gotten your frequent viewer gift package, let us know. We'll mail it to you. I think that
I haven't gotten mine yet.
Yeah. Well, you haven't been watching as much. I think.
I've watched, I think, every one.
Have you really?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll go. I got a bag of Skittles.
Skittles for you, Kyle. Sitting right over there. Kyle's pushed really back from the camera. You look very.
Actually, he just has a really small head.
Perspective thing happening here.
Oh, Goki definitely gets a frequent viewer
I
kit.
have Goki's address. We're good. Goki, you'll be getting something in the mail soon anyway. So
Hope it's Skittles.
it'll be all the leftover Skittles dumped in the.
So you're now attending the Turngate quarterly executive offsite onsite thing. where
Retreat. I think we were. Oh, part of our agenda item for these 2 days was to come up with a better name for this meeting. We haven't gotten.
Not offsite, onsite.
Yeah,
No.
we haven't gotten to that agenda item yet, but it is on the agenda unofficially.
At Expel, the offsite thing was like a dirty word because it implied like boondoggle, and the
I
execs were
see.
just
Okay.
and so there was they still to this day have NAFOs, not an FN offsite, that are literally all offsites, but they don't want to call it an offsite, so they call it NAFOs. So yeah, there's this concern that this is some glamorous thing that we go off and do. So, but
All right.
retreat would probably reinforce that even more so. So it might
I
not be
agreed.
a good.
So again, it's unofficially on the agenda. We're going to come up with a name. But because this is the Bruce and Heidi show, we are already off topic. So let's get back on topic and let's introduce the other people that are here with us.
Yes, yeah. So we have Kyle, who will introduce himself in some capacity.
I'm Kyle.
He was not prepared for any of that.
Kyle. This is Kyle. Kyle is our.
CTO.
Oh, good job, Bruce.
Thanks. Ken, I hope, will give a slightly more coherent introduction of himself.
I don't think Ken knows his own title, but let's see if he does.
Ken, title is Chief Engineer, right?
Yay!
Is that
He did it.
Run the engineering team, and guess known Bruce and Heidi in some way, shape, or form now for 20-something
yeah.
years, 25 years? I don't know, quite a while.
long time.
Yeah.
Through the Shmoo Group and ShmooCon, and have worked on a variety of SaaS cloud applications at various companies, and joined Turngate about a little over a year and maybe 3 or 4 months ago.
That's how you do an intro.
So I'll tell you one of the first times I met Bruce. You know, obviously we ran into each other at ShmooCon and various social events.
I have a guess. I'm going to tell you later if I'm right. Should I write it
Oh,
down?
I know you're going to be right. But one year Heidi invited me to Bruce's birthday. And I was like, oh, that sounds nice. A bunch of my friends are going to be there, and obviously you guys are going to be there. And I show up, and Bruce looks at me and said, who the hell invited you? So that was one of the first times I hung out with Bruce.
Yeah.
It turns out I'm an asshole, really. Like at core, like I can't. God damn, it's a miracle.
Your wife. Oh, I guess it's okay then.
Yeah. Well, that's about most of my social activity happens in sobriety, so I just accept. Like, especially I don't know who they are because I didn't know who you were.
Yeah.
Even though you'd introduced yourself at least 5 or 6 times.
So JP's not alone.
Yeah, JP, for those that don't know, JP Bourget from Blue Cycle, who has ridden many bicycle rides with Kyle at DEF CON and other places, will constantly walk up to Kyle like, hey, how's it going? Who are you? And like, Kyle's like...
Well, and anymore, I'm pretty sure it's done as a joke, but it's kind of like done so well, you're not sure.
Oh, no, that wasn't a joke.
Yeah.
It was not a joke.
He forgets every
Listen,
time.
I like to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Total benefit of the doubt. All right, so are we ready to get started?
Sure.
All right, so for Ken and Kyle's benefit, we usually like to start with some kind of, let's call it sort of current event newsy item, right?
Well, before that, I think we do have Goki commenting.
Oh, I can't read. It's too far away.
Yeah. So Goki.
If it's topical, I really hope it's on OPSEC.
Will be, yeah.
It's
I'm good
related
at
to
OPSEC.
that,
Okay.
yeah.
So Goki has a similar story where, for those that don't know Goki, he's almost always walking around with a fishing cap thing on his head. And
I'm
like,
sure he appreciated it.
Sometimes he's just sitting with a fishing
fish
cap
cap
on
all
his
the time,
head.
all the time, all the time. And a couple years ago, I can't remember if it was at DEF CON or where it was, but this guy walks up and starts talking to me in a very familiar way, which happens periodically because I'm really bad at remembering who people are. But this person was clearly familiar with me and Heidi
Well,
and
and
the
it
family.
happens to us a lot anyway because
Yeah.
we've kind of lived parts of our lives out loud on stage. So people will be very familiar with us.
And I was
we
like, whatever.
will be like,
So I
don't
just
know.
accept, like, there's this dude, like, who's being overly familiar with me, and I'll just talk and then quietly leave and hope he's not stalking me. And about 2 minutes in the conversation, Goki's like, you don't know who I am, do you? And I'm like, no. And he literally pulls out the hat, because he hadn't been wearing a hat, and he puts it on his head. And I'm like, Goki! And it was like a mask. It was the craziest thing, because did not recognize him without the hat at all. And the hat went on him. It was like what's her name? New girl with the bangs.
Zoe Deschanel.
Zoe Deschanel. Like when Zoe Deschanel doesn't have bangs,
That
their
didn't
glasses
land
on.
for me.
No clue.
I wasn't expecting you to go there, honestly.
He kind of has a secret crush on her.
Zoe Deschanel and Goki are like basically the same person in my head. So
That's awkward.
yeah.
I
Anyway.
can't believe you
Are you
said that
flattered,
after what
Goki?
I just said.
All right. Well, we should
Moving right
along
along
to the news of the
so,
day.
we just posted the link to the news of the day in the chat, and this is an article from the BBC. What is the messaging app Signal, and how secure is it?
It depends on whether or not you add the journalists to the chat with you.
Okay, wasn't going to quite go there, but yes, that is true.
I
And
think they're
have
going to be adding a feature to block journalists.
I have a bit of funny. I
I don't
on
think
that.
Moxie's going to be doing that.
In a second. But I happen to know that a number of you happen to have done a bunch of vetting of messaging apps over your course of your careers. So I'm just, I know none of you have read this article because I picked it like 15 minutes ago. But we know the people who run Signal. Well, we know some of the people who run Signal. And we know a little bit about what the security level of Signal. It's actually one of the good ones for the most part, right?
Sure.
So talk to me about that, and talk to me about what vetting a messaging app looks like, and what the features you're looking for when you do that.
Well,
What features you are looking for when you do that, sorry.
I mean, one of the thing that everybody focuses on is like, is it encrypted, right? Like, and and somehow equating that with like it's secure, and clearly that's just part of the equation, right? Like,
Absolutely.
Is it encrypted when it shows up on your display on your phone?
right. Well, that's the
And
that's
what
the
is,
crux of the issue.
what is it?
Yeah. And so I think that people get really enamored with the on the wire encryption and kind of forget about like what happens both on the phone and then when people, use it wrong. And that's where I think in this particular case, the shenanigans in the last week have really called that into play. Is like, the issue isn't necessarily like adversaries sniffing this over cellular networks and everything that's going on. It's, are the phones properly protected, and have you identity proofed the people in the chat?
And are the people that are adding folks to the chat, do they have any idea who they are?
Yeah. And so, a few years ago, I had to do an assessment of Telegram for use in business context. And one of the challenges we had was identity proofing the person on the other end of the conversation. And so being able to add them to your contact list, and taught people how to do out-of-band verification of like, send me a thing, I'm going to validate it out of band, and then we'll know who we're talking to. And then how do you validate that same entity as the entity in a chat room and have assurance in the chat room? It's really hard because those tools don't expose that kind of information very clearly. You can check the hash and all that, but like, who the hell checks their hashes in Signal as a regular matter of course? I mean,
I think
And
maybe just Kyle.
yeah, right, yeah.
And even once you've done that, do you do that per member of the group?
Right.
Or does one member do that and then everyone else just trusts when that group shows up on their phone that the person that built it put the right people in it?
Right.
Because
right.
I think that's the implicit problem, is when you get a group message, you don't necessarily know who everyone is, but you expected that the person that built the group put the right people in it.
Right. Transitivity of trust is actually a giant pain in the ass, as it turns out.
Yeah, and that has nothing to do with the technical ramifications of their security model.
No. Well, maybe. Like, at the end of the day, like, you know, if a user can break the security of the system by using it wrong, you'd argue, like, the system should be improved.
Yeah, it's that old argument, like, we make it idiot-proof, and then someone will build a bigger idiot.
Yeah.
So
And the U.S. is proving that daily.
I saw the cutest I can't find it. I was just looking for it, but it was a screenshot of like a Twitter post or something, and it was like HTTPS and SSL don't mean trust this. It means it's private because you could be talking to Satan and not know it. I mean, it was something.
So now
in
you
that
know
range.
you probably are talking to Satan if you're on Satan dot Satan.
Depends on whether or not
The Satan TLD.
Yeah. Satan's
Say,
got his
say
own
willing
TLD,
to pony
right?
up the bucks for for TLS certificate.
Satan's got his own root CA.
Yeah.
You know this.
Anyway,
I think that you know, the usability of the platform is what can sink it in that case, right? And nobody. I mean, there's a lot of things to have issue with what occurred last week and have been reported on, but you know, pop in the endpoint. If you get code running the platform, it doesn't matter how secure it was in the air. Like, now you have access to the phone, and Pegasus and other organizations have proven, like, you know, once you have bare metal access to the phone, like, it's kind of all over, no matter how good the phone platform is. So, and then after that, it's I don't know. It's all been very frustrating to see the reporting on it.
There's also been, and I don't know the state of the messaging apps these days, but there have been over the years problems with the way that they were encrypting at rest the messages in the SQLite databases that they're storing the messages in, and that opens you up to even more problems with local attacks to the device, to the platform.
Yeah.
And if you have malware running on your system, even if it's in user space, you can grab that SQLite database.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the more, interesting or frustrating, I guess, let me preface this by saying that, like, I don't really read the news very much. So, kind of based on cursory headlines.
But you read the memes, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of memes. How can I read news? I don't have enough time to read news. And
Yeah.
a lot of memes. I guess one of the observations that I had, and I'd be curious to know if this is also an observation that you guys had as well, is that there seems to be a lot of over-indexing on, is Signal secure? How do you manage people that are in a group chat with Signal and all these things around Signal, and less focus on, what was the messaging platform being used? Was it cleared? Was it certified? Like, was it actually like, why was this comms not happening on, one of the sanctioned platforms that already kind of takes that all into account?
I'm out of the loop.
that's like a whole other issue, right?
I don't think Signal was cleared for classified processing.
I don't know, but I would assume.
I would assume very much not.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that there's ignoring the classified part. There's the federal records and presidential records laws in place that, like, clearly personal devices and in this case, the group is set to auto delete in 1 week, unless you're memorializing with an e-com surveillance platform like
Maybe they got their signals crossed.
like Global Relay or something like that that's designed to memorialize all these information, even though they're ephemeral on the native platform. Then all of this runs afoul of Presidential Records Act and other federal records retention issues. So, like, that's one whole.
That's a well-trodden path at this point.
Yeah, for sure. And it's clear from the content of the messages, like, they were already using Signal a lot. And my presumption is there was no e-com surveillance going on, so that none of this stuff is memorialized, can't be FOIA'd, any of that. Classified, like, there's been a big push over the last couple of decades to get away from, like, fully GOTS government, built and run systems to being able to do secure messaging on COTS for classified purposes and that kind of thing.
There was a whole
But
program of the fort.
yeah, exactly. And they have made a lot of progress, but it's still not just YOLO-sec, like, oh, use your iPhone and whatever you download from the App Store and everything will be okay. Like, there's still guardrails, and the testifying that happened today in front of Congress was Yeah, it was my personal phone. It wasn't my government issued phone. Like I was using my personal phone. I'm like, okay, that's definitely not approved for classified comms. Not only, I mean, ignoring again the public records issues, but classified comms. There's no freaking way any of that was approved. It doesn't have to be some huge, bulky, type 1 crazy thing for it to be approved for classified communication, but it does have to be actually approved and not just,
And
I'm doing my best.
There are many other requirements for those devices with, security posture,
Yeah,
remote management, things like that.
yeah, monitoring the whole deal and just going to buying an iPhone off the street, installing Signal and whatever does not mean it's secure. So, yeah. Anyway, we could do a whole thing
Did that
on this,
answer
but
the-
we should.
Did that
we
answer
should
the
just,
question? I don't even remember what the
It
question
wasn't really a question. It was just a discussion about,
If you had been watching these on the
in
regular, we would
the
know how we do this.
news.
But no,
All right. So we're
You
gonna
don't
move
get a
on.
gift box.
We're gonna. Not that this whole thing won't be kind of random and fun, but we're gonna move on to something random, which is my random fact of the day. This actually is another question I'm gonna punt to all of you. Maybe you know, maybe you don't know. Here's the question: how much does the internet weigh?
See, there was a question.
There's now a question.
Do I have time to text 3 Rick and ask him? Didn't he weigh it at one point?
How much does the internet weigh? So are we talking about like the electrons in flight? Like, or is it all the communications gear involved in the internet?
I guess maybe you could ask the question: how do you
How do you-
quantify the weight of the internet?
Well, I guess if you're, it's
How do
like
you
if you
measure
measure
it?
smoke, you have to burn the
Okay,
cigar and just
so-
weigh the ashes.
Quantify as
To give
Yeah.
you, in the context of this question, we're talking about the data, not the cables.
Oh, okay.
Oh, just the data.
Because I was going to say, we take the internet off the earth and weigh the earth. And then the missing part would be.
I dare you to do that.
Yeah, okay. So an electron, I can't recall how much it weighs, but they're pretty fucking light compared to a proton. So you need, what, a couple thousand to make a proton?
Well, I think you'd also have to determine how much of the, hard drives aren't electrons. Like at that point, it's just like a magnetic.
Hard drives aren't on the internet.
Well, she's saying data. So
Yeah.
data in flight, if that's the internet, it's only the data that's in flight.
I would posit that only data in flight is the weight of the internet.
Now you have to factor in photons.
Oh.
Wait, what was the question again? How much does the internet weigh? Okay.
You have
I mean,
you
so
got
are we
photons
talking
and
like
electrons.
that's because at that point you just really include is it just backbone routers and fiber? Do you include because really the internet itself?
You got copper.
No,
It's just,
no copper, no cables, just
No
the
cables.
data, just the actual
Okay, so
data.
how much does the data on the internet
now you-
weigh?
But
The
now you're
data
back
on
to
the
hard
internet
drives.
at any given point in time, or
Now we're back to hard drives. If it's just the data, it's not the data in flight. It's the data.
I'm going to
at
measure
rest.
electrons. I'm going to try to guess the order of the number of electrons involved in the internet. I'm going to say it's 10 to the, I don't know, let's say
Why-
30th.
So why
Should I read you the
why
opening?
would
I'm
you
going to read you the
go
opening
with
paragraph.
trying to estimate the number of electrons rather than going to estimate the power requirement to run the internet, which would give you a rough order of magnitude of watts, which is you can then back out into electrons.
Oh, that's an interesting idea. So if you'd say if it takes 10 terawatts to run the internet,
Right.
then you could say there's 10 terawatts of data in
with
there.
some portion is lost to heat. Right.
I'd say 50%. So even then you're in the right order of magnitude.
Yeah.
Right. So 10 terawatts seems light for the internet, question mark. Maybe 100 terawatts.
Is the blockchain considered part of the
No, God no, it's not considered part of anything useful.
What about AI? Because that's a lot of power
Yeah.
these
It's
days.
stabby. All right. We're going to say, how many terawatts do you think it takes to run the internet? I'm guessing terawatts.
I think I would probably have to start smaller and
Okay.
be like,
and are you
what about a data center?
are you just-
and then I would
yeah.
probably guesstimate the number of data centers there are in the world and go that way because
Okay.
I don't even think I could fathom the compute. Like I could guess a data center and
Yeah.
guess how many data centers, but I don't think that I would be correct by just pulling
Okay.
power requirements out of the air.
So, all right, we might as well just get an answer because we're going to go down a really long and
Well, I think we should see if we're even close.
Okay.
Okay. I think I would
Even
like
though
to
we're
guess.
measuring differently.
Yeah, give me a guess in a unit of something.
I think we got to do it in kilograms, right?
tons or no?
Yeah. Tons?
Oh yeah, yeah, weight.
Yeah.
So how many data centers do we think there are in the
20,000.
Okay, and then how much power do we think has a
100
data center?
kilowatts.
Somebody's being really
On
petty in
average.
the comments. The answer is way too much.
And then now we need to multiply that by the number of the weight of the electron times the number of electrons in a kilowatt.
How many electrons are in a kilowatt?
That's why we've got.
Oh my gosh,
That's
you
why I got my
guys.
computer.
So that would be that's actually only 2 gigawatts of power on that estimation, which seems low.
Yeah, that seems quite low.
Incredibly low.
Yeah.
That's I think we're in terawatt territory. I think it's on the order of, my guess is it's on the order of 10 to the 30th to 10 to the 35 electrons, which backs you into 10 to the mid 20s of protons, which then if you take like a mole of hydrogen weighs a kilogram.
Of course it does.
Yeah,
Why-
mole of
Chris
hydrogen
knows
weighs a kilogram, 10 to the 23rd, Avogadro's number. So I'm going to say on the order of 10,000 kilograms.
this, which is roughly the weight of
The human head?
no. No, the human heart weighs 42 grams,
Oh, right, yeah. So yeah, 10,000 kilograms. That's my answer.
which is roughly the weight of something. What? Give
Oh,
me
roughly,
something.
what weighs 10,000 kilograms?
Elephant? I don't know.
No, no.
A Cybertruck.
20,000 pounds? I mean, that's like a delivery vehicle. Like
Yeah.
a.
Okay,
GPS
all right.
or
This is all I
something,
needed.
or-
Okay, so
Yeah.
do you want an answer? At least an answer.
Sure.
Okay, so originally, way back in '06, that'd be 2006, somebody, a Harvard physicist, did an experiment, and he decided that the weight of the internet was about 50 grams.
Woof.
Okay, so
Okay.
a couple strawberries. But this was determined to be, once we added iPhones and AI and a
Sure,
bunch
sure,
of other
sure.
stuff came into play, the internet maybe have grown to a potato at that point in time, right? But that still doesn't maybe seem quite right. I guess there was another study that was done and they didn't agree with that and they put it at like the squeeze of a strawberry into strawberry juice. Wired disagreed with both of these and they did their own little study. And just so you know, after they took into play basically everything you guys said, I was so proud of you listening to all of this, they ended up saying it weighed about 1/3 of a Cybertruck or 64,000 strawberries.
All right.
So, but their little argument, if you read through this, actually comes pretty close to the conversation you guys just had.
Interesting.
Wow.
This is what's called a Fermi problem.
What does that mean?
A Fermi problem is like something you can't necessarily actually
You can never prove it. Yeah.
prove, but like you can take a few estimates and come up with a rough
Reasonable
approximation.
So, I mean, that's 2,000 pounds is what they came up with.
2,000 pounds?
Yeah. And I would say like
So they
20,000 pounds. That was one order of magnitude
Well,
off.
listen. So you should read the article again. They may have not have included some of the same data points that you guys included, right? So, but I think it's interesting how you chose to drive at it. It was.
I'm impressed we got even in like the reasonable ball. I mean, I'll take one order of magnitude off of what they figured out.
I'm shocked, honestly.
Yeah, that was pretty. That was pretty
It
good.
makes me question the accuracy of their information.
If we just spitballed it and got it.
4 randos in Virginia were able to pull that out of nowhere. Yeah.
I am very
Yeah.
not disappointed by that whole discussion. It made me quite happy, actually.
Cool.
That is not bad at all. I think.
Oh, how's your? Let's say you
there
killed
we
your.
go. I
Okay.
killed my iPad.
All right. So now.
Now, I have more questions for you.
Okay.
So we because we have everybody together, the Turngate team, part of the Turngate team anyway. We are going to be a little self-serving, more than usual anyway, and we're going to talk a little bit about Turngate. Starting with, I think everybody who's watching us actually has heard about Turngate and who we are, but just for posterity, I'm going to punt this first question to Bruce. For those who may be listening or may be listening in the future who haven't heard of Turngate yet, can you give us the kind of top-level 2-minute elevator pitch about the company?
Sure. So the the crux of it is, I think, the reason why I think Turngate exists and the problem we're trying to solve is rooted into the migration to the cloud over the last 15 years. And as cloud services came online and companies realized there was value to like not running your own stuff anymore, it quickly bifurcated into two primary models. One was infrastructure and one was software as a service. And you can argue about platform as a service. I don't really want to get too deep in that distinction, but as you looked at the infrastructure that went into the cloud, everybody kind of freaked out because they're like, hey, my data center now has a delete button, right? Where before I had a data center and there were guards and guns and dogs, or at least a wall with a door, and it was very hard to make the whole thing go away. But when you moved up to AWS, somebody could just be like, poof, and make your whole infrastructure go away. So we spent a lot of time protecting cloud infrastructure, looking at controls and auditing and all this kind of stuff, and rightfully so. At the same time, companies went to cloud SaaS and pushed up and like, I don't run my own ERP anymore. I have some third-party ERP. I have my own CRM. I use Salesforce. I don't run my own, financial system. It's somebody else. And they push all these things to a third party, and they're pretty glad to wash their hands of it, right? Like, I don't want to run this stuff anymore, which is great. But the problem that arose is that you lost track of what was happening in your SaaS environment, like what your users were doing, how they were doing it, how the services were performing, that kind of thing. And as much as we got a handle on cloud infrastructure security, the alerting and detection and response activities, cloud SaaS has been kind of this weird space where even if you got alerts, it was very hard to go prosecute and understand what was going on. So it was difficult to say like, hey, this account got popped. I want to know all the files they accessed or all the things that they changed in the administrative interfaces of all these systems in the last 24 hours. And you'd open up these logs and it was just super opaque and hard to figure out what had happened. A lot of times companies just throw their hands up and like, I have no idea, I can't make sense of these logs. So Turngate's designed to help you make sense of SaaS audit logs, to be able to quickly analyze system and user behavior, to look at what happened and do audits, to do investigations, and just quickly gain understanding from this what was previously a very opaque source of data.
Cool. Was there any particular, maybe in vague terms, incident or kind of investigation that really led you to dream this up, or was it just an overall?
So at one of the places I was at, I was a customer of Expel after having been their CISO. And I think very highly of the team there and the work that they do. But one of the places where MDRs like Expel struggle a little bit is when you get outside of their automation, when you get outside of their kind of the specifics that they do every day very, very well. And I had a situation where a user reported, hey, I got phished. And they came with very concrete evidence, like, this is what I did, this is what I think happened. And I'm like, well, that seems bad. And so I went to Expel and I'm like, hey, I think this user got phished. And they're like, well, we don't have any alerts on them. And I was like, okay, I don't think those two things are necessarily mutually exclusive. Like I can have a bad thing going on, but it may not be of a nature that it's generating an alert. And so at that point, I'm kind of at the edge of what an MDR is willing to support. And they're like, well, we can just go look through logs, but they're going to charge me by the hour. And I'm like, well, that's not okay. Like, I don't need to pay them to do that. We can do that. And my thought was like, oh, we could totally do that thing. And so I had a really good security engineer working for me. I'm like, hey, go look at all the logs that we shoved into Datadog and tell me what this user did in the last 48 hours. And it took him like 3 or 4 days to come back and give me an assessment of what he thought the user had done. And he's like, I don't really have a lot of confidence that this is it. I didn't understand these logs. And this guy, I mean, he's been doing cybersecurity for 20 years. He was a really strong security engineer, wasn't used to looking at these logs at all, and really couldn't make heads or tails out of what happened. And thankfully, the user hadn't been popped and everything was fine, because if I had to wait 48 hours to make the determination on the scope of an incident, I would have been screwed. So it was really impressive to watch an otherwise very intelligent person run headlong into the brick wall that was all these SaaS audit logs.
I've heard you tell that story so many times,
yeah.
I think it's really relevant to why we're on this journey. I mean, it is the reason why we're on this journey, right? So Ken and Kyle came on. I think obviously you saw the value in this product, or I hope you do, or you wouldn't be here. I guess my question for all three of you, though, is what what do you see as kind of Turngate's North Star? Like, what are we driving towards, and what do you think the industry trends are that we're betting on to keep us kind of relevant in the space right now?
Industry trends is remote workforce. I think, well, not just remote workforce, but that's one of the things that has pushed folks away from on-prem services into cloud services. It's just easier to manage them. I don't expect this model to be going away because the monetization drivers to move services that are paid for one time and you leave them on-prem have now changed. So you're now putting these services in the cloud and you're paying a subscription model. And like universally, that's helped the software industry because it was not as profitable to sell at one time. It's far more profitable to sell it every month. And it helps you pay your engineers to keep it updated. And it also improves the user experience because you don't have to manage this complex software that you're not an expert on. You leave that to the experts that built it. So that's an industry trend. I don't think it's going to be going away. That's unfortunately, as a consumer, I don't like the subscription model, but as a vendor, it's healthier. But I don't think that's going to go away. And that's largely what is becoming, ubiquitous across all the software. Having software platforms move to the cloud, and then your audit information is stuck in that cloud. And our platform is designed to help you get that data out and review it. So I think that's a trend that's here to stay.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, I mean, kind of in a similar vein, it used to. There's this saying that I remember us talking about at some point. I don't remember where it was coined, but that identity is the new perimeter, and I think that way back when companies had very clear demarcation points about where their data flowed, and now that is no longer the case, and really it's just SaaS applications and identity services that are ultimately kind of the arbiters of all that stuff. And so as somebody operating a business of really kind of any size or consequence, your data is just naturally going to be spread across all these applications, and I don't see that changing. If anything, it'll just get even more so, right?
Yeah, the value of the data in some of those systems is also drastically changing. It used to be, as an incident responder, your treasure trove was going to be Windows event logs. It's like, well, I can see everything that happened in a Windows event log. But now things are happening in a browser that has literally no concept of an audit in browser to say what the user clicked on or what they did, or the tokens that are generated in the application could be stolen by some malicious software, shipped across the internet and reused, replayed, and use that authentication token to execute even more behavior that's not on the host at all. So how do you audit that? And most of what's happening, most of the valuable data is now being interacted with on web-based applications or some version of that. And that treasure trove that what used to be Windows event logs is gone. Like, you can't find anything. You don't know what happened to your data. You don't know who accessed it or what happened. So that data is now in these siloed providers, spread across, as you were saying, spread across all these different places. And we're trying to make sense of that. Like, what happened to this data? And you can find those links as they move from one service to another service, potentially using SSO or something.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to think about, I haven't really worked in an enterprise environment in quite a while where I was responsible for the day-to-day infrastructure of a business. But, from what if you think about like going back to 15, 20 years ago, on-prem enterprise apps, whether it's CRM or like SAP or whatever, did they have audit logs? Maybe. I don't know. I think they did, but like generally most people didn't care, I think. And for the most part of the reason why they didn't care is because all of your like logging and monitoring, I think, was over-indexed on infrastructure. Yeah. And if there was something that you needed to investigate, ultimately if you own the infrastructure, you could ultimately get to the answer you know that you needed, or there's a high likelihood that you could get to the answer that you needed, even if the application itself didn't have the auditing in there. You might be able to go look at like database access logs. You might be, you know, like.
Do you think that also might be because most of those on-prem applications leveraged the centralized identity store, which was generally Active Directory?
I don't know which enterprises you're working in, but most of the ones I worked in claimed to do that, but then like didn't actually. Sure, they maybe like, you know, sent like a clear text LDAP authentication request somewhere.
Also, I want to take exception with the idea that Windows Event Logs was a treasure trove. I think in general it would be akin if you put a box of treasure in the middle of a trash dump and then blew it up. And so like the important bits are there, they're just scattered in a bunch of shit all over the place, and
Maybe
you got to
I should
go
have
dig
said
it up.
a properly instrumented Windows Event
Oh,
Log.
yeah.
It's more of like, you know,
It's arbitrary.
it's kind of like when you're going, you know, like if you're like hunting through like, you know, a vintage clothing store.
Yeah, right, yeah.
You're like looking for that
Exactly.
one gem.
Yeah.
But going back to, I guess one big difference with SaaS apps versus how companies traditionally had run enterprise applications that there is no way now to, you know, get that information out otherwise. You either get it through the audit API that they have, or you don't.
Or you don't,
Can't,
yeah.
You can't rely on your
Yeah.
sysadmins to go figure out a way to tell me what happened, because you just
Right, and you're also not in control of retention or anything like that.
Sure,
You
yeah.
know, like I don't get an alert when Salesforce is like, hey, your audit logs are going to start to expire because you're using up all your space or whatever.
Right.
You know, versus like, you know, hey, var log is filling up. Somebody should go do something
right
about that.
You're not getting endless emails that you just delete.
To root at, we're like, yeah, all those log partitions sure are full. Delete. Yeah. Okay. Fair. That hit a little too close to home.
I'm going to interrupt
All been there.
my questions here to ask another question.
Okay.
How do we pronounce CISO?
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Well, I have a follow-up
That's not how
question.
you pronounce it.
Yeah. So I am of the school that it's information, Chief Information Officer, so it's CISO. It's a short I.
Understood.
But it still
Okay,
conveys
I'm
the
leading, I'm
S
going
sound,
somewhere.
yeah,
Yeah.
to the C. So
GIF.
Fair enough.
I've always just said CISO, but that's
okay.
You know,
I
Okay,
will
how do we
maybe-
pronounce?
I don't really have any strong opinions.
How
on
do
this,
we
so I'm dogging
pronounce
this.
SAAS?
SAS.
Yeah, I'd go with SAS on that one.
Yeah, SAS, yeah.
Oh, okay.
SAS.
Just making sure.
Mhm.
Oh. Was there an
How do
option?
how do we pronounce?
Uh-oh.
Never mind.
Were we gonna give Ken crap for attribute?
Attribute.
Attribute.
Well,
I
you
thought
can
it every
attribute
other
something
meeting.
to something. It's just that's
I'm
not
just-
how
Not the-
we-
Right.
Not
I'm just
the word.
surprised it's taken like a year and a half to finally give him shit over it, but it did.
Oh, is it
require-
really
It's the
been that?
first time I've heard it.
Oh,
Yeah.
really? It's
Yeah.
been like
Yeah.
Oh, we were
It's been
just
a
in
while
a
for me.
meeting, and Ken was attributing things in an attribute kind of way.
But with a remote workforce, it's like really hard to give someone shit and have them know
It was
that
adorable.
you care not at all.
Yeah. The best part of it is that this is going on, you know, in a Zoom meeting, in the Zoom peanut gallery. This is all happening, and of course, I'm the one talking, so I'm not looking at the Zoom chat, and everybody's like just laughing the entire time.
I mean, you know, it's fine. It's all good. All right.
Well, Peter wants to know, how do you pronounce Moab?
I figured that was Peter.
Moab.
Moab.
Yeah. In
It's
absence.
pronounced Ken on vacation.
Ken gloating about being on vacation.
Just in case you forgot, I'm gonna be in Moab.
I'm gonna
next
be riding my mountain bike in Moab. While all you suckers are working.
Yeah. Ken, what do you think about this technical decision we're making? Well, while I'm in Moab next week.
We're watching this season of Taskmaster right now, and one of the comedians, every chance he gets, goes, "Well, you know, I grew up in Nigeria,
Zimbabwe."
Zimbabwe
Yeah.
or whatever it was. Well, you know, I'm from Zimbabwe."
And it became a trope very fast, so he just leaned right into it.
Nice.
Every
So
answer, it was
funny. It's
glorious.
so good.
Yeah, it was very good.
All right. So, my next question, you might have a different answer for this, each and every one of you, and I think that's okay. But what do you see as being our key features as we continue to develop the product? I know it's kind of a big, hand-wavy kind of question, and/or.
I'll go last because I'm afraid that I'll take all the good answers.
Oh wow.
Wow, that's pretty confident.
Yeah.
let me further caveat this by saying we'll keep it short. You get one answer each, and it's by no means absolute.
Meant to be a comprehensive
Yeah,
list.
it's
of
not
why
a
we're cool.
comprehensive
Yeah.
list.
I'll let you go, Ken.
And if your answer is Moab, it's wrong.
Okay, so to repeat the question?
What do you see as being our key features, like a
Key
way?
features, or differentiators,
Yeah.
or it's got to be a short answer, right?
Well, I'm pretty sure. I'll
Yeah.
give you a few sentences.
Man, if we can't do this, we're in trouble.
I
Well,
mean,
no, because
there's a lot.
I've
There's
answered
a
this
lot.
question a lot, but I'm trying to kind of come up with the most concise way to
And he
answer
wants to
it.
take the good answers from you.
And I want to
guys.
take all the. I want to make sure I don't
Yeah,
leave
yeah,
you
yeah.
with any good answers.
Yeah.
But the way that I will often explain it to people is that if you need to figure out if Bob in accounting's his account got
Jim,
hacked,
but that's okay.
or Jim in accounting, somebody in accounting, if their account got hacked in your company that uses the standard kind of laundry list of SaaS applications, and you need to investigate that event, you have all these disparate data sources that you need to go to, and you need to understand all the logging formats from them, how they handle identities, how that links into your identity provider, and then you need to understand what basically what types of primitives they have in that application. Is it files, tickets, whatever?
I think you're making this concise.
And I'm getting there. And so
I'm getting to the concise part. Give me a bit.
I think so. In my mind, one of one of our key value propositions is that we make it very easy for you to answer a question like, what did Bob in accounting or Jim in accounting's account do across all of these different applications over a given time, or with these different types of access levels, or what type of administrative events they do. Any question that you can kind of think of around that, you can answer easily with our application. Whereas answering some of those questions on your own, trying to query all those disparate data sources would literally would take you a very long time. Like in your example you're talking about a couple of days for somebody to do that, because there's probably development of tools and scripts involved. And I don't think that's an exaggeration. At all. And so
Thank you for believing my story.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. I was not the person who had to answer that question initially, but
Can you be more concise?
So I would describe that as identity aware, log investigation. I mean, the key functionality, or the core functionality, I think that you're demonstrating, is that you can traverse multiple services and pivot off of a single identity and see that. Anyway,
or a single type of application as well, or type of access.
So I'm gonna go with a different one. Try and rob another good answer from Bruce. To me, the problem starts even earlier. That's certainly an issue. Is you would have to jump to various different interfaces to look at all these different data sources. But I think even starting out, one of the biggest challenges that I've seen across all organizations, large or small, is getting access to this data in an easy enough fashion for them to manage. It becomes a new project for them to manage just the infrastructure to fetch and retain this data. So one of the things that we worked really hard on was making a low friction, I hate that buzzword, but a low friction mechanism for enabling users to collect this information from the beginning. If we can do it via OAuth, we do it via OAuth. It's literally 2 clicks, and they're streaming data in. Well, actually, we're streaming the data in for them. We're managing the ingest, making sure that it doesn't fail, making sure the API doesn't go down. If it does go down, we retry. We store the data, and we keep it for as long as we can, according to whatever the license is. But that, in and of itself, is an entire project that an engineer would have to manage. And every single one of the integrations that we've dealt with does that differently. It might be streaming data, it might be API polling, it might be in a CSV format, it might be in JSON format, it might be a gzipped CSV with JSON data in it. I mean, it could be anything, and having to track and manage this over time as these APIs change or go up and down and have service interruptions. That's a frustration that we eliminate for the customer, and that is across. That's not just one integration they get that with. That's all their integration. So just managing that, I think, is a core functionality that helps, especially smaller teams.
So Kyle's basically has led the development of our data ingestion pipeline, if you can't tell. And so he's just looking for a pat on the back that it's a very hard problem that he has solved.
That's not fair.
No, I mean the front end is
it is every once in a while there's just like Kyle's on a call and just despairs like I learned more about this, and it's just like you can just tell it's like God damn it. And so it really has been more complex than I think I appreciated it was going to be to manage that stuff. I think I had greater faith in humanity that they wouldn't have built such awful Rube Goldberg machines to emit data, but they really have.
One of the things that we kind of tripped and fell into was hypothesizing or theorizing about putting together a consortium to standardize this, to standardize SaaS audit logs so that you can have predictable fields in there and you don't have to do these Rube Goldberg machines to track identity across these services. And it gets even more complex when you start tracking SSO granted tokens across these applications, because if you're using something like Okta for SSO, you get a token that permits access to a downstream service, and that downstream service cares not at all where that token came from, the provenance of that token. And as an investigator and analyst, you want to know the provenance of the authorization all the way back to Okta or whatever your IDP is. And we observed that in the logs. We'd love to fix that, but that takes a lot of cooperation between SaaS providers to start normalizing and standardizing these logs.
So I'm going to give a slightly different answer.
Well, you have to. That was the requirement.
Yeah. Okay. Good. It will not be concise. So in Loki, what's the is it the TVA, the Time Variance Agency, or whatever the hell they are? Yeah.
Authority.
Authority.
What are we even talking about?
Well, that's why it's good. This is a journey. This is a new one. I'm trying this one on for size.
Getting the Miata.
Yeah. So.
Get in, loser. We're going for a ride.
So one of the objectives of the TVA was to minimize variance from the timeline, right? To identify like when weird shit was happening and like nudge it back to where it was supposed to go. And in general, most security investigations are like wildly trying to go off the TVA timeline. And by what I mean by that is they're at a point in time where they start an investigation and they have a hypothesis and they have a piece of data and they believe all of it to be true and relevant to the thing that they're going off and investigating. And they run down this investigative path and they spend all this time and energy to look at a thing and realize eventually like, oops, that was wrong. I had a bad hypothesis. I did a bad thing. And I have to rewind back to the beginning and figure out where they were wrong and how to get back on the right path. And this happens, there's kind of this, framing and confirmation bias that occurs when you start a security investigation because of the way that the tools that have been created work is you start with like an event or a log type or a thing, and then you're like, I've never seen this thing, ergo it must be bad or weird, and I'm going to go find all the things that look like this, and I'm going to go chase this thing down, and you waste all this time and energy doing that because you had to start with like a very concrete fact or what you felt was a concrete fact. You couldn't start with a more abstract concept of like what did Jim in accounting do as a broad thing. It was like, I found a thing that said Jim read a file. Jim's not supposed to read files, and you go down that road. And so what I hope we can do is get people the ability to interact with their data in a more kind of abstract and like not human readable like prose, but like around the concepts that you use to think about problems and problem solving and investigating to get eventually to a concrete fact that's true, and then follow that down the path to scope, to investigate, to remediate, and do those things. And so I like to think where the TVA of security investigations minus all the evil bits. So
I was going to say the problem with your analogies, they're always that good guy, bad guy.
there is some
thing,
evil
right?
stuff, but I think we should go update the website with like we're like the TVA, not the Tennessee Valley Authority of security operations without the evil,
yeah,
because
there's-
that's not confusing as a tagline at all.
That's the people that make lakes.
Yes, they make
Right,
lakes.
they make lakes.
And they're not making any more lakes. So,
So, what's interesting to me is that sort of the underlying commonality between the things that all of you said is that it's just making it easier.
yes.
It
Yeah,
really
yeah.
comes down to making this whole process easier and simpler for our customers and or people like me.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I don't know what people like me is supposed to mean, but
Well,
I'm not
less
a-
technical, but you understand the concepts, right? Like,
Sure, and I'm not a heavy practitioner of any of this stuff, right? So
but I think that's at the core. I mean, that's one of the windmills I'm tilting at is really like not to equate myself to Don Quixote. And,
Bruce is a heavy analogy user, so I'm waiting for one to go really wrong. But here we go.
well, no, yeah, this one will go wrong. But
Is that where the windmills came from? Was Don
Yeah.
Quixote,
Yeah,
tilting at
tilting
windmills
yeah.
is like tilting at like because he was like
He was like he couldn't see well. or
It's like
something,
going after
so
it, he thought it was a
they were
dragon
probably
or whatever.
dragons,
Yeah.
yeah. So tilting at windmills is actually a bad thing.
Today I learned.
Yeah, today. Yeah, there you go. TIL. So, but there are all kinds of people who know like what a file read is, what administrative change is, all these basic concepts, but they wouldn't know the guts of some JSON to be able to understand like where those things happen. But I contend like you shouldn't have to. Like 99% of the planet doesn't need to know the guts of some JSON. They should just have a big sign that says this is an administrative change and be like, oh, cool, thanks. And I think that's the kind of thing that we're trying to shine light on. Yeah.
So we've had some pretty cool successes as we're still in this development process, but we've had some pain points, right? What would you say has sort of been our biggest pain point, or the one that we need to address maybe most in the near future? I'll start with you. We'll go the other direction this time.
Also, thank you, Alex. We tried, and there's a difference between getting it and trying to, and then implementing it correctly. So I think, and Heidi's question here is it just like, okay, so we get it, but we've probably made some mistakes along the way of trying to make it work.
It.
Yeah, yeah.
Big it.
The big it. So, I think that, one of the things that struck me about the work that we've been doing is how wildly different the data sources that we deal with are, not just between each one. Like you can look at like GitHub and Google Workspace and say like, obviously they're different companies, they're gonna log differently, whatever. But even inside of those, like you understand like there are teams working on individual products and they are emitting the data that they think is important in a way that they think is important, but it isn't necessarily harmonized across that whole organization. And so, at Microsoft and Google and whatever, we see variance between each of these different data formats. And it means that we have different amounts of fidelity in what we can see and how we can view it, but also even like what they choose and what they think is important isn't necessarily what we think is important. So the example I've been using a lot lately is a few months ago, Microsoft released an advisory, said some threat actor was masquerading as IT support for some companies, convinced people to share their screen, and during the screen share, they asked for remote control, and the user granted remote control. The adversary then planted malware, popped the boom, 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 bad things happen. So I'm like, oh, we ingest M365 logs. We should be able to find those instances and then like help people find if they've had this problem. And what's really fascinating is if you go look at Microsoft event logs, they will tell you when someone's screen shared, but they will not tell you when someone enabled remote control of that screen share. So of all the things as like a security person I would want to know when it comes to Microsoft Teams, I think it's probably like files downloaded, someone allowed remote control of the screen, and then who the hell joined the meeting. Everything else is a second tier log, right? But somehow like Microsoft has decided, nah, I'm just not gonna log when someone got remote control of a workstation. Like, how the hell does that happen? So it's stuff like that where you realize like these logs are like best wishes and good thinking, but they're not necessarily everything that we want them to be as security practitioners. there was my answer.
What was the question?
I don't even. I just felt like I had a riff on
What
that.
were some of the
I'm not really
challenges?
sure
Challenges
that,
or the?
really answered the question I was asking.
Perfect.
But it got close. It had to do with the pain points that. I mean, it was that's a pain we feel because
is
the
a
logs
pain,
don't.
yeah.
Yeah, it
always
wasn't a
provide-
self-inflicted pain. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's adjacent to the question I was. Yeah, sure. Let's just keep
Yeah,
going.
well, so the one thing
Yeah.
I learned in press training is you answer the question you wanted to be asked, not the
Perfect.
question you were asked. And so that's absolutely.
I actually think I helped teach him that. So
Yeah,
we'll
yeah.
just keep going.
You can answer whatever question you want.
I like red.
Incomplete data is, I think, one of the biggest challenges in building predictable behavior into the application. And we'll get logs that, for instance, have IP address information for the client that made the request, and then we'll get an absolutely identical event type that is missing that information.
Right.
And to build, I mean, we're not at the point where we're calling anything a detection, but to build a detection-like object that factors in information without really any ability to rely on the information to be there in across these logs, even the same log type, has been really incredibly frustrating. I think that lack of predictability for data being captured in the logs is one of the hardest things we've had to figure out how to surmount.
All right. Well, I think I'm going to take a slightly
different
different approach here.
Yeah.
So I think pain points. One of the pain points that really sticks out to me, and I think it sticks out to me one because it's a pain point that I've worked at I want to say I've worked in some way, shape, or form at like 7 or 8 startups now. I don't remember the exact number, somewhere around there. It's probably like when I first moved after I'd lived in Seattle for 10 years, going off on a different subject. People would say, "Oh, how long have you lived in Seattle?" 10 years. And then, 5 years went by, and then 10 years went by. And then one day I was telling somebody, "Hey, I've lived here 10 years." And I did the math. I'm like, "Oh, actually, it's been like 20 now." I've been like saying the same answer for 10 years. So it could be more than that, but that's kind of my guess. And so anytime you're bringing, we're bringing a new product to market, but there's really, we're kind of introducing a new market segment, right? Or a new type of product, right? A new class of product. And so, and I've done that at a couple of different companies, and it's super challenging because when you're just building a better mousetrap to like competitors, for example, then in some ways you often kind of have a playbook, or at least you have something to look to, right? And you have there's existing customers out there, and you can go talk to them and understand the pain points they have with the current products. There's all of this information. And as people here have probably heard me say multiple times, everything is a feedback loop. Everything that we do at Turngate is a feedback loop. As a developer, when you write code and you run a test, that's a feedback loop. You ship something, the customer uses it, that's a feedback loop. And so, as a software startup, you want those feedback loops to be quick. Because every time a feedback loop happens, you learn something and you iterate and you kind of get closer, you converge more on the thing that is more likely to solve the customer's problem. And so I think one of our pain points, which is something that we've been aware of and we've been working on and making a lot of progress on, but especially early days, is that introducing a new product, that feedback loop, the customer doesn't exist. Yeah. And so you kind of have to figure out how do you simulate it? What do you do? You need to iterate on something. And now that we actually have people using the product, and we've got customer feedback loops, we've noticed, I think, a big just acceleration improvement in how we can move things forward, because it's just the path is a lot clearer, or we just have a lot more clarity, on where we need to go.
Yeah, higher confidence.
Higher
right?
confidence, yes,
Absolutely.
exactly.
I always it's kind of a loose comparison, but it's because we've gone through this twice, buying a house where there's no comps in the area.
Right.
How do you? You don't even know where to start, right? If you're buying a house, there's a rough market value, but if there's nothing to compare it to, you have no idea of the absolute value of your home, right?
Yeah.
So,
right.
Yeah, it's it's way easier to build a better version of a thing, or look at something and make a comparison, this versus that, whatever, than to stumble in to a new market or new part of the market, be like, we're just going to do a thing nobody's done before.
All right, we're actually at 3:59, so we've run
we've
run good and long. But I'm going to ask one more question.
Oh,
Gosh, and I don't know where to go with this one. I think I'm going to stay on the Turngate topic. I was going to turn it and have some fun and ask us all about bikes. We all ride bikes, and maybe I'll do it anyway. And I'll
Ken
run
rides them in Moab.
Ken does ride.
I don't ride bikes right now.
Maybe I'll take us a few minutes long this turn. But I want to ask you, in 3 words, describe the culture of Turngate, company culture. 3 words.
What does that do with bikes?
I'll get there. It's my next question.
3 words.
3.
Man. I think there.
Wow, that was.
Well, you stole all the good answers again.
Yeah, I stole everyone else's answer. I think in general.
Well-organized show.
Yeah. I'm not going to use 3 words, but I'll be very, very concise. We look out for our customers as much as we look out for ourselves. And I think that we're trying to be as healthy a company as we can for the industry, for our customers, and for our employees, and trying to balance all of that. So I would say our focus is those 3 things. So that's 3
words. I'm
words.
going to come back to you for 3 words.
Okay. Good.
So all of that in 3 words.
Yeah.
3 words.
3 words.
All right, and it's company culture.
Company culture. Yeah.
Let's see. I'm gonna go with curious.
Definitely.
I definitely see an element of fun, so I go with fun, even though it's a little bit trite.
No, it's good. I totally agree with that one.
And Cajun.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's an inside baseball, but I agree with that one too. The gators and the crawfish.
Yeah, but it's also like a little bit of a spirit.
Yeah.
Cajun has a little bit of a nuanced connotation to it.
I agree with you. I like that.
I guess I would say trust, openness, if that's a word. That is a word, right?
That is a word.
And what is a word for not taking yourself too seriously? Is that?
Well, I can think of many words to say
Self.
that. Deprecation.
Humility?
Yeah.
Humility,
yeah, maybe humble. Yeah.
We all know what you mean. I like that.
Yeah.
3 words?
Miata sandpaper TVA.
I'll
I'm
take
all
that,
about
too.
analogies or metaphors or things
I'm gonna have
like
to Google this TVA.
things
thing.
like similes. Yeah.
All right, one more quick question. Favorite bike ride ever?
Wow.
No, one more. I mean, like Moab.
Moab's up there on my list, but I can't say it because that's Ken's thing.
I know, right?
Yeah.
My favorite bike?
Yeah,
You're
favorite bike
asking
ride
me.
ever. We all ride, so we've yet to ride together, but we will do that.
Favorite.
Epic.
I mean-
Put some descriptor, memorable.
Sure. Yeah.
Talking about bicycles, right?
Yeah, I'm talking about bicycles.
I mean, I'd say probably like memorable. I mean, the part of the version of the whole enchilada that I did in Moab was pretty memorable, mostly because it was like 100 degrees out, and spend 9 hours contemplating whether or not you're having a heat stroke.
Yeah.
Suffering makes a bike ride memorable. There is no doubt about it.
Yeah, when you factor in memorable, my answer kind of changes. I'm gonna go with the one I prefer to think about is Alpe d'Huez.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
That was a hell of a climb.
yeah,
Yeah.
that was a fun one. Beautiful.
I think the Gap to DC ride that we did together was very
You
memorable.
don't have to pick a ride you did with me. It's okay.
Well, the other one I would say is the Garrett County Grand Fondo. So 100 miles and whatever 16,000 foot of climb, and that was
Memorable.
yeah. I mean, again, like pain makes a ride memorable, and that was a painful
How many
ride.
hours did it take?
Like 8. It wasn't
Yeah.
bad. I mean, I'm pretty happy. I made good
How
time.
many feet
Yeah.
of elevation was it? Did you say?
14,000, 15,000
Okay,
foot.
yeah, that's-
I mean, it was a lot of climbing.
Yeah, it's a
There
long
was
ride.
2 miles of flat ground on that entire ride.
I got
Yeah.
Lantern Rouge on one of those rides.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did
Wow.
not actually. I was stunned that I was not the tail end of that thing.
Yeah.
So, you?
I think for memorable, although I'm trying to forget it like childbirth, or I probably never would have gotten on a bike again, was that morning for the Gap ride where I literally for 4 hours said, "Don't cry, don't die, don't cry, don't die,
Yeah.
don't cry, don't die."
Yeah. Cover Linda Hagerstown, the CNO,
Yeah.
40 degrees and pouring down rain.
And riding through mud that was about this thick. So that was that's one of the hardest things I've ever done.
That was a favorite?
Memorable.
Memorable.
By no means. My favorite was that I survived it, didn't cry, and didn't die.
Yeah.
So, but anyway,
Cool.
all right. So we're gonna wrap up here in just a second. Upcoming events: we will be Bruce and I will be at ColonelCon next week. So we are next week.
Yeah, next week, and we were going to broadcast together from ColonelCon, but
But we're not going to do that because somebody has broken their
I'm
hand.
going to go talk to a hand surgeon about getting his bone put back together, and so I'm going to be late landing in Omaha. So maybe you'll do this
Yeah.
without me.
Oh.
Yeah, so we'll figure out. There'll be some subset of people, and I may join in from the United flight from Midway
We'll
to.
figure that out. We'll let folks
Omaha.
know. Maybe we'll do it Thursday instead.
Yeah,
I
who
don't know.
knows,
We'll
but
figure it out. But
anyway.
we'll let people know in advance. Otherwise, thanks for joining us today. Thanks to Kyle and Ken for. They had no idea.
Oh,
what
thanks
was
for
gonna
having
happen.
us.
Yeah.
We just said, hey, this is part of the agenda, and they had no idea what questions were going to be thrown at them. I think they did a great job, and it was fun.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Bye.